The views expressed on the following program are those of the host, guests, and callers. They do not reflect this network or streaming service. And welcome again, folks. Welcome to another week of the Brother Wade program.
So I've had all these experiences, and I've been researching the paranormal since I'm in my mid-20s. I started having these recollections of experiences that I just cannot explain by conventional means. And about 2 years ago, I founded the Project Stargate Fringe Research Group, and I called it Project Stargate because I named it after a special access remote viewing program ran by the Army and the CIA. And it consists of myself, my historical advisor, Greg Shipp, and my other co-host and co-researcher, Jake Malcolm. And we have some new people that's about to come on board as well. So we're first and foremost a research group, but we do have celebrity guests on our show like Kathleen Martin, Dr. Barry Taff, parapsychologist, Lara Bach, Howard Storm. We've had some great guests on our show, and it's just been really good researching and learning with other people. But at the end of the day, we're just looking for the truth, and that's where I am today.
Now, if we can, real quick, because some people are complaining about audio, so I just ramped up the audio. Our guest tonight is Mark. He's a good friend of mine on Facebook. He's a fellow paranormal investigator. Our guest did not show up, so he has agreed to come with us. Your group is a research group. It's pretty interesting you call it a research group. Is that the same for our listeners, is that the same as a paranormal investigation group, or are you guys do a little broader field?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked me that. I should have clarified that a little bit better. So it's all of the above. We first, as far as research goes, when we're doing a podcast, unless we're doing like an interview, or even when we're doing an interview, whether we do it, we're researching. And my original idea for Project Stargate was to document my research and share it with the public one way or another. Now, as far as I didn't mean to get off the beaten path there, but at any rate, we have people that are in our group that are seasoned investigators. Jake Malcolm, he has been in the field a lot more than I have. I've been out in the field several times. Me and my partner Greg Shipp, we've actually had some success. We've had several paranormal experiences together within the realms of ufology and other paranormal phenomenon. And we've did a little bit of investigating. But my partner Jake Malcolm, he would be an ideal subject for one day in the future. When I come back, I'd love to bring him with me.
Yeah. Now, who is for our listening audience? Because I know some of these people in the field, but our listening audience may not know who they are. So, who is Mr. Malcolm? What does he do? And somebody in the chat room, in the UNOW chat room, asked what happened to the video really quickly here. The video transitioned. We were waiting for him to get ready and come up, so I played some paranormal investigation videos because people have said they would like to be entertained before the show, before I come on, so that's why. But what does Mr. Malcolm do? And also, if I'm not mistaken, you're also a Bigfoot researcher, too.
Yeah, so as far as Mr. Malcolm goes, I'll tell you about Greg and Jake. First of all, I'll start with Greg because I've known him longer. Greg is one of my best friends. I'm very close with Greg. He's one of my best friends I've ever had. I'm in the process of recruiting him, one of my other lifelong best friends as well. But at any rate, he's someone that I've grown to trust. He's very adept with historical things like historical mysteries and just history in general. He does reenactments. He's in D&D. He's my bro. And I tell you what, man, he's an excellent researcher. And that's something I'm trying to nurture him with and get him more involved in producing content and whatnot. And he's making good strides. And He's a very good interviewer as well. So I'm very thankful to have him. Jake Malcolm is one of our newer members. Jake Malcolm he's in his mid-20s. He's a very dynamic young man, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him. He's a very talented investigator and researcher, and he's also interested in to some degree in history. So he's very adept with our local history here in North Georgia as well. We've been investigating heavily into an area that I've coined the Coal Mountain Triangle, and I can talk more about that later later if you want me to in more detail. But he's been very instrumental in helping me finish putting some of those pieces of the puzzle together, and I'm real thankful for him. He's also in a local rock band, and he's a very skilled musician and a very talented man. So I'm real thankful to have him within our research group.
And maybe we can have them as a guest in those fields as well. And you mentioned Dungeons and Dragons and reenacting, which is pretty cool. Now, does he do actual live history reenactments like Civil Wars, or does he do special fantasy type?
Yeah, he does. I've actually gone to one or two of his reenactment gigs before, and he was the one time I visited. He was doing Nordic reenactment, Viking reenactment, and it was fascinating. Like I love history. That's one of the things we tackle in Project Stargate is historical mysteries, and he's got some content that he's deep into working on to produce, and I can't wait to see what he does. It's going to be really exciting.
And if I'm not mistaken, also talking about history, Georgia has a huge Civil War history of the South. They have huge paranormal, UFO, and Bigfoot history. I've been to Georgia on 3 occasions to visit family. So let's get into the Bigfoot, because that's the interesting stuff here.
Sure, let's talk about Bigfoot. So
I myself have seen him 3 times, and one of them was not a very good experience. Really? What avenue of Bigfoot or Sasquatch or the wild man or Yeti or whatever our audience would like to call him today, what aspect do you like researching about, or what area do you research?
That's a great question, Brother Wade. And I'm going to preface the answer to that question with this. When I started originally researching the paranormal, I started researching parapsychology and ufology primarily. Parapsychology consisting of all different types of psychic phenomenon, including PK or telekinesis or poltergeist, as they're also called. Clairvoyance, the ability to view objects or events in other areas of time and space, even precognitively. Near-death experiences, telepathy, stuff like that. So, I really got into that, and I got into ufology, studying, just going headfirst into ufology. And then I kept seeing all these connections between those two subjects. It was unavoidable. So with that in mind, the more I researched into ufology, it kept leading me to cryptozoology. And cryptozoology, I've researched a decent amount on my own. I had Ron Moorhead on my program last year, and he wrote a book called Quantum Bigfoot. And he's the guy he's well known for having the sounds of Bigfoot and some remarkable evidence that he's captured. But as far as the Bigfoot research community is involved as a whole, I try to keep them kind of at arm's length. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on in the Bigfoot research world. And but I do have a local group here that I've worked with a little bit in the past. They're called the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. I just want to give a shout out to them. They're a very, very talented group, and they'd be someone you might be interested in talking to someday. They've captured a lot of evidence.
Have them contact me. Now, when you say that there's a lot of stuff going on, are we talking positive, negative stuff? Because our listening audience is very diverse. And they may not understand like we do this field in that capacity. I think what you're talking about is the same thing that happened to me. There's a lot of people that like to stick their feet into the dirt and stay there and not let you pass them. And then there's other people who like to laugh and ridicule.
That's correct. You know, as far as I've been ridiculed. I've had, but for the most part, a lot of people I have found today are more accepting about these blanket paranormal phenomenon in any of it. And I use the word paranormal only as a blanket term, because to me, it's all paranormal. It's things that we do not simply have an understanding of yet, and that's what paranormal means. A lot of people confuse paranormal with parapsychology, and they're two completely different things. They're connected at the same time.
Well, as a friend once told me, paranormal means like normal, but it doesn't always have to be. And for a lot of people, paranormal is ghost hunting and spirits, and they want to get involved in all this stuff. But there's a whole, I don't know if blanket's the term, but there's a whole nother sector, if you would think of it that way. And each store is a different topic. If you can just picture a mall with a bunch of stores that are different topics. And these people are only going in to one or two stores because they're selling high-end clothes. They're not going to the other stores that are run by small businesses and stuff. If that's a good analogy for our audience today, where you and I will cover anything: aliens, Bigfoot, Pugwudgies was on last week's show, Native American lore, and I bet you it's all in Georgia.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what I was kind of mentioning earlier about the Coal Mountain Triangle. In the Coal Mountain Triangle, I've had this idea for many, many years regarding this area. I've noticed that there's a certain area of North Georgia that has a lot of unique and different types of paranormal phenomenon that's pretty consistent. So I had this idea that there might be a sort of portal area, for lack of a better term, like where a lot of high strange, different types of high stranges comes through. And I believe that, so I had this idea, and I finally put the pieces of this puzzle together recently, and I decided to call it the Coal Mountain Triangle, because it runs through Coal Mountain, Georgia, which is not too far from where I live, actually. I live in I live in Forsyth County in a town called Gainesville, and so I'm pretty close to a lot of this stuff. But we have everything from a satanic cult that operates out of a town called Ball Ground, that's notorious for haunted locations.
Now, when you say satanic cult, we're talking an actual cult, or are we just talking a group of people that like to draw upside down stars and think they're all great?
A cult.
A cult. Is there any way to have them on the podcast? Now, that would be cool, too.
I do not associate with those types of people,
okay.
And I wouldn't know how to get a hold of them. But at any rate, I've lived in Ball Ground, though. I've lived in two different
Now, where is that from, Atlanta, Georgia, or Augusta, Georgia?
That would be about 50 minutes north of Atlanta. It's in the extreme north Atlanta metropolitan area in the North Georgia mountains.
So you're out of the swamp area, what I call it, and you're more into that rural flatland area.
Well, we're kind of I'm not too far from Brasstown Bald, where the start of the Appalachian Trail is. Yeah. And I'm not far from Blue Ridge either. So we're in North Georgia for sure.
Now, for the listening audience that may not know what we're talking about here on Diversity, you live in an area that is what I would consider wilderness, as in the southern wilderness, swamps, different weather areas. Now, do you find that the Bigfoots and the things that happen down there are different than in the north? Because I have always thought that the southern states kind of have a different type, if you would, maybe a different breed of paranormal than we have up here when winters and all that set in, as far as nature is concerned with Bigfoot?
That's actually a great question. That would be a really good question for my friends Johnny Two Bear and Angie Williamson from the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. But I'll say this about that. I have a comment. So the further south you go in Georgia, okay, the further south you go, the closer you get to Florida, is the ones down there look more like an ape. They call it the skunk ape, but it seems to have most of the characteristics of your average Bigfoot as well. I've heard of different types of Bigfoot that are similar but different. There are striking differences. For example, there's a woman in California. Her name escapes me off the top of my head, but her account of a Bigfoot encounter at close range was just riveting. And the way she described this entity was, it was very tall, about 8-9 feet tall, very hairy, but the eyes were striking. Their eyes were almond shaped and almost wrap around.
Yeah.
So there's all different descriptions of Bigfoot from different parts of the world. I believe I've never had a Bigfoot encounter. It's one of the few things I have not encountered in my life. And
it'll change you when you do.
interested in
It'll
that.
change your whole perspective. And I can agree with the face. That's the first thing I saw as a kid when I saw mine. I thought that it was a. However, apes do not have human facial features, not human expression, and apes do not have what I consider to be the human gait, which we walk. A human walks a certain way. Apes do not have that. Now,
Their stride is incredible.
Now, when you said a different type, and the skunk ape, for our listeners that may not know what this is, we're talking a mix between maybe a Borneo and a orangutan. I've even heard stories of long-haired gorillas that were let loose that might be the skunk ape. But other than the ape part of it, you're not going to miss a 9-foot creature. No ape on Earth is 9 feet. And you live in Georgia and Florida, where I believe animals can live that cannot let. You guys have Burmese pythons down there. These animals live there naturally, and they can live there naturally. So it might be an ape. However, there's no ape that's 9 feet tall.
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, there might have used to be, and even used to be. I don't think they got larger than 6 to 7 feet, even the ancestors. Now,
Who knows?
Now, what is it like down there for spirits? And last week we were talking about elementals. We were the pudwudgie. I still don't know how to say that word. Is any of that stuff down there too? I mean, it's wilderness. It's prime area for the wild side of the paranormal.
Well, I'll start with this. In the Coal Mountain Triangle, nothing would surprise me.
Now, what's the Coal Mountain Triangle again? Because I'm trying to picture this thing in my head. It's kind of like a Bermuda Triangle, right? Or a circle, even.
So, the Coal Mountain Triangle, it goes right through where I live, the bottom, the southern end of it, and this area I gauged from Dawsonville through Coal Mountain to this town of Cumming in Forsyth County, and then the western line goes northeast through Ball Ground, a town called Ellijay, which is very synonymous with a lot of UFO activity as well.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, that's also government facilities and coal mining and railroad and all that down there too.
Well, actually, here shortly, maybe here in a few minutes. Actually, I had something that I was going to get to with that. Something you might find very interesting.
Yeah.
So anyways, and then it goes south. From there, from Ellijay, I gauged it southeast back towards Dawsonville. So that includes the areas of Gainesville, also where I live, and the haunted Lake Lanier and the Dawson
How
Forest.
many counties does that cover? If you were to draw a big circle so we can do something a little easier for our listeners, if we draw a big circle, how many counties in that circle? I bet you about
So,
6.
can you give me just a minute and I'll pull it up?
Yeah.
Hang on just a minute.
And what we're talking about, folks, for our listeners, is this is an area that paranormal UFO, Bigfoot, natural, unnatural, whatever you want to call it, sightings happen. And he has been researching this for a very long time. It's very interesting to me when we have territorial sections of Bigfoot or paranormal or UFOs, because it goes to show that for some reason there's natural areas. Now, I would like to know,
Okay.
Mark, as well, is there any ley lines included in this too?
So, a friend of mine to answer that question real quick, a friend of mine who is a practicing, she's an anthropologist, archaeologist, and a parapsychologist. Her name is Pamela Nance.
Okay.
She's been on my show a few times. She also has a research center, which I'm a member of, along with MUFON. But at any rate, she says that there definitely is a ley line that goes over this area, and it proceeds all the way up through Cape Fear, where another major UFO situation happened with Mr. Chris Bledsoe. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I thought there was. I'm trying to picture. There's another large, big city somewhere down there too that comes to mind. And installation at one time was down there. Um,
Well,
trying
what I
to,
do,
yeah.
as far as installations go, Dawsonville is about 15 minutes down the road from my house.
Okay.
Usually when we go into town, to Walmart or to grab a bite to eat or whatever, we'll just get in the car and we'll drive down to Dawsonville. Now, Dawsonville is known, and this is within the bounds of the Cold Mountain Triangle. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Um, there is an installation that's simply known as the Dawson Forest installation, and people have had
Hmm.
reported to have a sort of a Men in Black like experiences there.
Yes. I'm
My partner
familiar with
Jake
some of those
has been
cases.
there. My partner Jake has had some firsthand experiences there. We're actually planning an expedition that we're going to document later this year, and we're going to cover this different aspect of the Mountain Triangle in that regard over the next couple of years. But anyway, this area has something that's radioactive deep down inside. It's flooded. It was flooded years ago, and a reactor. There's all kinds of theories about what's actually down there. I've heard all kinds of stories, everything from a experimental aircraft to some kind of a fancy reactor they were experimenting with to a crashed UFO. I mean, there's all the theories are boundless. I mean, but what we do know is the area is synonymous with high strangeness, including Bigfoot encounters and UFO activity, and possibly like I said, there's been reports of Men in Black encounters as
And
well
you have the
in and
little
around the facility.
Rock Creek.
That I am not as familiar with. Jake would be much more familiar with that, probably.
Rock Creek, Little
Um,
Rock Creek. You also have Horse Cove down there in that area. All of these are sighting areas, I guess you would call it. Um, I don't know. There's a huge, or there was during the South, a huge Civil War type thing. But yes, something. You bring up the fact that they had nuclear barriers down there. Uh, Florida's been known with strip mining of some kind. They do. They've been known to hide things in that strip mining. Um, and yes, it's almost like a Mothman type weird thing going on down there. Now, have you ever seen anything like Men in Black or anything related to that?
oh, thankfully, no. I do know people who have encountered Men in Black. I have some connect ties within the professional paranormal research community. We'll just put it that way. And I know some people who have. I have not, but if you want to, I can talk about some of my experiences if you want.
Okay, the place I was speaking of is East LJ and LJ towns there. They're famous for Bigfoot sightings too. I don't know if you're familiar with that town or not.
Yes, because they're really close to Blue Ridge. LJ is very close to Blue Ridge,
Yeah.
Georgia, and Blairsville. So that whole area is a Bigfoot hodgepodge and UFO hodgepodge.
And there's a Davenport mountain range in that area too, by the way. But anyways, um, and you said your friend would be better to know about that stuff.
Jake Mal, we ought to. If I'm not trying to invite myself back, but
No,
if
you
you
can
could
come
give me
back
an
anytime you
opportunity.
want. I don't mind how many times people come up
Oh,
here,
well,
but
I appreciate that, man.
it would be
I
great
really
to
do
have
appreciate that.
different topics and different things. Move the show in a direction that would be awesome. Now here's a question that I have about this research with MUFON and stuff. I've never had any luck with MUFON. I've been involved with 2 cases in my area, which one I saw myself, I witnessed it myself. What is MUFON and what do they do? For our listening
MUFON.
audience's sake here, because we're mentioning stuff that's great in the paranormal community, and I want them to know about this stuff for firsthand accounts.
You know what? That's a good topic. So let's dive into it, I guess. I'm a relatively new member of MUFON. I've been on the fence about joining MUFON for many years. What MUFON is short for the Mutual UFO Network, and I belong to the Georgia chapter. Among many people, I have my friend Ralph Howard. He's a member of MUFON, and we actually have our own little subgroup called BrewFon, where we have private meetings and we get exclusive briefings on some things that in the world of MUFON and ufology as a whole. So we have some great fellowship also. It's really enjoyable. But at any rate, MUFON is the world's largest grassroots organization that investigates UFO sightings and related phenomena. And they take a hard scientific look at it. They're more there's very diverse. It's very diverse. There's people from all walks of life, religious beliefs. People from all over the world are a member of MUFON, and generally speaking, they try to stick with the nuts and bolts stuff, but the paranormal side of this whole thing is undeniable.
Yeah. Now, do they dive into the paranormal of aliens and abductions and all that weird stuff and creatures being left behind, or do they?
Some of it.
Don't they?
The abduction stuff. We have me and another colleague of mine. We're starting up he's starting up a experiencers group for Georgia, and I just recently offered to help him with it, and I wanted to help him with it and maybe get some good research in, because I've never actually had this opportunity to sit down face to face with another experiencer and witness that hypnotic aggression. And one of my goals, besides research and helping other people in some way, hopefully, is to help me decide if I myself want to go under hypnotic regression. I'm very on the fence about it.
Well, there's a different side of hypnosis, and I'm sure one of the questions you can ask your friend is what are the ill effects down the road? I am on the fence with hypnosis as well. I believe in meditational therapy better than actual hypnosis. Hypnosis, in my opinion, forces you to remember stuff, or your body will remember stuff by your experience, and it may not have been the actual experience. However, if you're under hypnosis and they do a good investigative research, if they do a good session, if they have it, they will take the pieces of falsehood from the pieces of truth, and it will form something. It's a process. Now, I have seen the bad side of hypnosis. I have seen people that have been affected by the side effects of hypnosis. I've also seen people that have lost weight with hypnosis, and I cannot explain it. So I'm I'm very I'm 50-50, but
Technically, hypnosis is considered part of parapsychology. By the way, just a
yeah.
fun fact.
What about meditative therapy? Have you ever thought of that?
For me, myself personally, no. I'm actually, to tell you the truth, I have some issues. I'm a veteran, also an
Yeah.
Army veteran, and I have some other sources of trauma that I contend with, and
Yeah.
I am contending with. And what's helped me a lot, actually, to be honest with you, is legal hemp and cannabis products that are legal to sell and use in pretty much every state now. So it's helped me out a lot
Well,
when other medicines have failed me.
I am okay with marijuana. I see other aspects of it. However, and I know a few people after the show are going to send me emails saying, "Wade, what you're crazy." But there is side effects to that that's bad. However, the main part, if you use the plant the way it's supposed to be used, and the way that it was intended by God to be used, it will show help with anxiety and other things. Now, I have used it once. I had a very bad experience afterwards. However, that's me, not thousands of others who've used it and had wonderful experiences. But I don't know what to say about it. I think it's okay. I live in a state now where our crime rate and people, I mean, it's just stupid for the government to lock somebody up because they are smoking a plant in their house.
I agree,
That's
100%.
when
If
there's
that's
other
all they
crimes
did,
out there
let
that
them
they
go.
should be locking people up for, and they're not. We won't get into it, but on that now. Second of all, thank you for your service.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Now, getting back to the Bigfoot mixed with the MUFON, have you ever investigated cases where people have seen Bigfoots dropped off by UFOs, or do you know anything about that?
So I don't know any. I'm going to get back to you in more detail later down the road on that.
Yeah,
But I do know there are some cases that fit that profile. I had Stan. Let's go back last year.
yeah.
Stan Gordon. He's a well-known.
Should I be familiar with that? That stands out, but I'm not sure.
So probably so. He is famous for investigating the Kecksburg UFO incident,
Uh huh.
and also he's a big UFO and Bigfoot slash cryptid researcher in the state of Pennsylvania. He's written books about it, and he was on my show last year. He was also on Unsolved Mysteries. He's been on a lot. He's got a great documentary right now.
And for our listeners, what is that really quick? Because I know some of our listeners are scratching their head as we give scientific data here. What is that incident that for them, for the listeners? I know what it is.
So in the I think it was in the mid '60s.
Hmm.
They started tracking NORAD, I believe it was, and some of the Air Force units up in the north of the northern states were tracking an object that was coming from Canada. I think it went over one of the lakes, and then it made a turn. It made quite a turn. I'm not sure how much of a turn it made, but it went over Michigan, and it went over some others. I think it went over Ohio. I want to say it went over Ohio, and then it made another turn, and it wound up in Pennsylvania. And this object was seen, real fiery object that would have seemed to be under some sort of an intelligent control. And then what happened was it crashed in this little town near Pittsburgh called Kecksburg, and a volunteer fire unit witnessed this object implanted in a ravine, and it was acorn shaped. It had some occult like markings going around the bottom of it, and it was emanating. Before they arrived on the scene, people saw a mysterious blue light strobing from the ravine, and then people from NASA and the military showed up, quarantined the area, and there were still a lot of eyewitnesses that saw this object. But that's in a nutshell what happened in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania in the '60s.
Now it couldn't be anything of the dome things that not Hitler and Germany made. Possibly coming over from Russia now, could it? Because it was in that area of the 50s when they were doing this stuff.
That's a great
After
question,
the World War II.
Yeah, I have a hypothesis about that. I've had this hypothesis for years, and I can share it with you if you'd like.
Yeah, what's it called? I'm trying to think. Oh, the Bell.
The
No, but it
Wunderwaffe.
had another name. The
The
Bell
Glock.
was one of
There's
them. There was another
the,
one that just picture a McDonald's cup where the top of it's slimmer and the bottom of it's wider. There was one, and then there was one that was completely flat with a guy in the middle of it. We took the guy in the middle of it, and we actually have video of them testing this now, along with the SR-71. If you're familiar with that.
so
Um,
my hypothesis is this, and this is just a not hypothesis.
yeah,
I have no earthly idea if this is true or not. Back to World War II, the
yeah.
world the Soviets and everybody invaded Germany. I don't believe Hitler was killed there. By the way, didn't mean to jump into that can of worms, but I think he survived. But anyway, they were invaded. The war was
Well,
coming to the
somebody was
Germans.
found. Somebody was found with a female. There was a male body and
Yeah,
a female body found. It does not mean that they were the people themselves.
very true. As a matter of fact, the skull that Russia has that they swear up and down is Hitler is not Hitler. It's a female skull. We found that out recently through DNA research.
And you do realize other people committed suicide with them. They're not the only people in that place.
Very true. Very true.
And
But
they leave that story out that two of his comrades went with whoever this was there. If it wasn't Hitler, two of Hitler's main men went with them. They all committed like a mass religious type suicide thing.
it was like almost like a pseudo religion. It was insane. But at the end of the war, when they were invading Germany, and Germany, the war was done. Some of the top Nazi, there were some top Nazi officials that disappeared under mysterious circumstances. One of them, now that some of these names will escape me, so you'll have to forgive me for a moment. But I'll tell you the one I vividly remember researching: Martin Borman.
I'm horrible with names too, so don't worry about it. I'm horrible with.
He was like the head of the Nazi party. He was like Hitler's right
Uh-huh.
hand man.
Left
And
hand
Martin,
man. The other guy was his right hand man. But anyways,
right.
yeah,
He was
yeah,
up there
yeah.
with
Oh
Himmler and
yeah.
all those,
They were all
cats.
sitting at the main table eating shrimp together. Let me tell you that much.
Right. So they had this idea. There's this idea that's been floating around that maybe Martin Bormann may have gotten in this device and took off. Now, what was this device? Well, we know that it's very similar to what was reported at Kecksburg. It's very similar. There was occult markings reported in the schematics for this. They called it the Wunderwaffe. That's what we think it was, because they kept bragging about this wonder weapon they called Wunderwaffe, and which is German for wonder weapon. But there was a hypothesis I had years ago. No considerable evidence to back it up. Just too many similarities between these two objects. But what if Borman? What if this device was able to time travel? What if it was able to break into the future by messing with gravity or something like that?
Well, that brings
And he
up a whole
appeared in the
nother
1960s.
that brings up a whole nother topic on how the Nazis actually got, and they have found some of these things, actually got like the spear of Christ. Did they go back in time and steal it?
Well,
Did
they did because
they?
the Indiana Jones is based off reality.
Well, Indiana Jones is 30% reality. There's more to it than that. But however, we now know that the Nazis took uh, a lot of paintings, a lot of scientific stuff, a lot of museum relics, and they put them underground and burned them at the end of the war. Um, I think 50% of our history was destroyed because of it. Books and everything. And what I'm
I
trying
have
to
a
get
rumor
at
that
here is it was not a very nice thing that they did. However, when you mention time travel, any time travel device I've ever seen has something to do with something spinning in the middle of it. And this thing had something spinning in the middle of it.
so. From what I understand about this device, it had a gyroscopic-like thing inside of it that
Hmm.
was full of mercury. And we know that mercury conducts and it's dangerous for humans. However, when this gyroscopic device is activated and it has the mercury in it, supposedly the odd phenomenon happened in and around the device. Plants seemed to die really fast. Several scientists reportedly were killed under mysterious circumstances, and it appeared to hover with a purplish glow.
And on top of this is the thing never tipped over. If you were to really force something up like that shaped, you have a possibility of the top being too narrow and going over. This thing never went over.
Who knows? Just an interesting hypothesis.
And they have two videos of it. They have two videos of it. I've seen one of them. And what's very interesting of this thing is that in all of my years studying UFOs, there's always a fluid in the middle of them, and they're always shaped like this for some reason.
You know, Bob Lazar, interesting you say that. Bob Lazar made a comment, and this looks like, it reminds me of an encounter that me and my mother and my father, we all had a close encounter, and I may have had missing time, actually, with this incident. But irregardless, the object I saw looked like it was probably about 500 feet away above the wood line where I was living at the time. And my mom and dad saw the object first, but when I came out there and looked at it, it looked like it was just molded out of something. I couldn't see any rivets. I mean, of course, it was 500 feet away, but still, I had a lot better eyesight than I have right now in my older age. But that's what Bob Lazar. I remember Bob Lazar when I was listening to him on Joe Rogan. He said something to that effect. I found that really striking.
Now, when they described acorn shaped, are they talking about the top of the acorn, the hat part of it, or are they just talking about the rest of it?
Well, from what I understand about the case, from what Stan told me off the record, the object was like kind of like, if you think about the top of the acorn with the bigger part on the bottom, that was the widest part of the object, from my understanding, and that's where they use occult symbols, for lack of a better term.
Was one of those symbols a fish? It's like a circle with a V shaped onto it, because almost every UFO or researcher that I know of has that symbol somewhere in it. It's like a fish symbol.
Wow. I'm going to have one of the people from the Rendlesham incident on my show as soon as we can arrange it. Sergeant Pennington, Jim Pennington, or Pennison.
We need the network to do a show about this where we can have callers call in and everything. We really do, because this is a topic that I have always been interested in, because a lot of people say the Nazis were bad. They were. Don't get me wrong. They were bad. What they did was horrible. However, the technology and science of those people, if you would, was, they had cures for cancer. They had operational statuses where they could do operations.
They were the scientific envy of the world at their time.
They had another vehicle that could hover. They had a missile that they could shoot things. And some people even say it was not, now his name is slipping my mind. He did electricity. He did the
Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla. They said that it was the Nazis who made the hole in Russia, not Nikola Tesla.
That's fascinating. I've
never
heard that. That's fascinating.
What was it called? Tunguska or...
Tunguska?
Yes.
In Siberia?
It blew a hole in the earth. They said that his earthquake machine, and Nikola Tesla made an earthquake machine that he copied from somebody. They claim that the Nazis were the ones that made this, and he took it to perfect it.
I thought the Tunguska thing happened in like 1908 or something.
Well,
maybe I'm wrong.
Well, there's been multiple times around the Earth. Now, I might be thinking of a different one, but there was a hole blown in the side of Russia. Now, this is the same place where campers went, and they all ripped out of their tents naked, screaming and yelling like they were on fire, stripped naked and froze to death.
The Day Outlaw Pass incident. Yeah, that's a fascinating case. I am just
all of these instances are almost all the same. Like in Hitler or his scientists, let's say, had a weapon like this. Nikola Tesla had a weapon like this. They said Einstein was working on something to do, and it turned into the atom bomb. That
Yeah,
dropping the thing would be better than aiming it.
yeah. He was definitely worried about what would happen if Germany got their hands on the atomic bomb. He warned us about it.
And if you think of Einstein, he worked on a lot of things that were used by government officials to do a lot of bad things.
I'm afraid you're right about that, man.
I hate
Definitely
to
have.
say it, but the guy was not in there making, wonderful progressions for mankind here. They made an atom bomb. They made something that takes hydrogen and explodes the molecules in the air, setting everything on fire to the radiational principles. I hate
You
to
know, it's
say it, but
interesting. I was watching the last season of Twin Peaks: The Return, and I'm a big Twin Peaks fan, by the way.
I don't know
Just
what that is, but okay.
pop culture reference. But anyway, in the return season, this demonic entity of some kind that calls itself Bob was released when we
That's
detonated.
horrible.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
There's a guy at work that comes in and calls us Bob all the time. I'm going to tell him that.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna reference that now at work.
That's hysterical, man.
He comes in and calls me Bob. He calls Bob Bob, the real Bob, the guy that's called Bob. He calls me Bob, another guy Bob. I maybe that's the reference he's making. I don't know, but
Who knows, man? Bob's a nasty character, though. I can tell you that much. You should watch the show. It's great.
what
It's
is it?
paranormal.
What is it? I just found out
Well,
about Stranger Things being related to Dungeons and Dragons. So these are.
if you like Stranger Things, you'll like
I don't
Twin
know
Peaks.
if I like it. I've never seen an episode yet.
So it's about an FBI agent to this fictitious town in Washington State to investigate the murder of a prom queen. And as he investigates the case, things just start getting weirder.
Was it like the X-Files?
And weirder. Yes and no. You just got to watch it. You got to start with the first season. There's 2 seasons that came out in the 90s, a movie that bridged the gulf between the second season and the third return season that they came out with several years ago. It's incredible.
I gotta really start getting into watching some of this stuff. I mean, Forever Night, Knight Rider, maybe I watched Airwolf, But some of these, you gotta send me a list of stuff to watch because I'm not up with things. X-Files, I was dedicated to that show. I was pinned to the screen even on reruns.
Yeah, I grew up watching the X-Files, and that was before I really paid any credence to any of this stuff. I just watched it because I thought it was funny and a little creepy.
Remember the X-Files episode called The Fluke?
Oh, man.
The one where that thing was found in the swamps, was found in a sewer system?
Was it one of those standalone episodes? Because
yeah, something like that. It was in the beginning. And the big leech thing the guy threw up in the shower? My mom saw that episode, and she said that thing's real. She's seen 4 of them in the hospital setting. 4 of them in the emergency room, hospital setting. She said they saw those, and those things live in our intestines, from eggs, from tap water that will have eggs in there. And it was the weirdest thing because after that, I was almost afraid to drink water.
I'll stick with bottled water, my friend.
Anything can have this in it.
That's nasty.
And it lives in the sewers, and this whole thing was like this big, like, leech human being-like thing that mutated. But that slug thing, she goes, oh, my God, that's a fluke. I said, oh. And sure enough, it was called a fluke. She goes, I saw 4 of them in the emergency room come out of people, and in her whole lifetime, I think total of 10 things, 10 times she's seen one of those that were taken out of somebody.
Wow.
That's giant ringworms and all sorts of stuff.
Ooh, that's nasty. Whew.
Oh, yeah. And one of the episodes I honestly enjoy because I know the history behind it might be true. It was the one with the Native Americans out west that they burned all the alien bodies. Well, a lot of the Native Americans out west believe that aliens came from another planet.
Yeah, they do.
Or something came here.
They certainly do.
Now, they put a twist on it and made it UFOs and made the smoking and all those other guys behind it, but it was very true. And a Native American said a saying it's very true was that things are only remembered. Things are only remembered for as long as, or live for as long as you remember them.
Yeah, they know a lot. That's for sure. The Native Americans and First Nation people, I have a tremendous love and respect for them. They know a lot, and they know more than we do about reality
Yep.
in some cases.
And I've been told stories of Bigfoots and other stories about other things. And I don't think they have any reason to lie, and I don't think they have a reason for get publicity. So a lot of their stuff, I tend to think is real and should be paid attention to.
Sorry about my dog.
Yeah.
My pit bull mix is going after a deer.
What kind of pit bull is it? What kind of dog is it?
He's a pit Shar-Pei mix.
Well, you got a hunting dog.
Yeah, he likes to keep an eye on the place.
Well, tell him if he's going to chase the deer, he has to bring it back to you.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I love venison. I used to hunt. I used to hunt years ago hunting, just to sustain, just for subsistence. You know.
I don't know if I'm okay with killing animals or not. I imagine they would kill us if we were out there. So.
They probably come after me.
I mean, a lot of people tell me if I met a bear, it would hurt me, but I don't believe so.
Oh man, I would stay as far away from a bear as you could possibly.
Well, my dream would someday go out there and see a grizzly bear in the wild. That would be nice to see. However, if they're as big as those Kodiak things in the zoo, I don't know. I've in certain careers I've been in my life, I have seen wild animals, and sometimes you wonder. They're there for reasons that, God put them there for a reason and told us not to build houses there for a reason, you know what I mean? But just think, the largest mammal is the bison, so nothing gets larger than one of those.
Man, I hate when them come after me. Whew.
Why, you ever been chased by one?
No. Oh no, we don't have that stuff down here.
No.
Just bears and coyotes and possums and raccoons.
What would a coyote do? They won't do anything to you.
Oh, oh my gosh, man! You don't
Really?
want a coyote come out. They gang up on you. We have a whole pack.
I heard all you got to do is jump up and down and scream, and they run like wusses.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I'll tell you this: I wouldn't want to get mixed up with the coyotes.
Now, they coyotes or coyote dogs? I heard if they're coyote dogs, then you're in trouble because those things don't care. They'll rip you apart like a hyena.
Coyotes will. Period. I wouldn't touch them with.
But they're not that big.
Well, they're not as big as your canine or whatnot, but they're like kind of like wasps. They gang you up. They will get you.
I've never been gotten by a wasp. I have taken a wasp's nest and moved it somewhere and never got hurt by it.
Wow.
Nothing to brag about here. I'm not trying to brag, but... Now, let's go back to now that we're on these animals. You living in Georgia, have you ever seen like El Chupacabra? Have you ever seen strange animals? Like they say there's giant lizard men down there. There's dog man down there. Have you seen any of these things or heard about them?
Personally, I haven't really had any, to my knowledge. I don't think I've had any kind of type of cryptid experiences. I've had just about everything else on the side. I've experienced almost everything else on the side. But me personally, I have not. But there's a lot of activity around this area, especially in and around the Coal Mountain Triangle.
Now this is coined by you, right? This is not an actual.
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you say this triangle place, what? Now let's go back to this UFO. This building or installation was believed to have a military substance or nuclear waste in it. That reminds me of like Mothman because they buried the bombs there.
Yeah, they had the TNT igloos. I'm actually planning. It's funny you mentioned that. I'm actually planning an expedition in a couple of years to go up there and meet with the Wamsleys and maybe Mr. Steve Ward, hopefully, if he can make it, and go out there and investigate.
If you ever go to Point Pleasant, I would love to plan a trip with a bunch of people and go to Point Pleasant. It's on my bucket list.
Sure, more than
But
better.
I have another theory of this Mothman. Who's to say it wasn't? Because not only was the Mothman sighted there, but I forgot what the case was named, and it's kicking me for doing it. I'm kicking myself for
I believe we're talking about the mysterious case of Indrid Cold.
Well, yeah, but also there was a robotic creature, and Amazing Science magazine had it on their cover for a long time. If he's familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, you would know it. This creature had glowing eyes, and it was like the bottom half of him was on a floating disc, like a floating circular barrel. This thing was seen down there as well as Mothman.
I was not aware of that. Interesting. I'll tell you what I know about.
And we also have the Jersey Devil. We also have stories like the Mothman. We have where you live right now, stories of the Mothman. There's stories in San Francisco like the Mothman. So maybe
Chicago and Mexico City too, I believe.
Maybe it's some kind of demonic thing and not even a moth. Now, how they got the Mothman when it was described as a large owl humanoid, I don't know. But
it was they got it from a comic book.
I don't know how owl-like humanoid turns into a insect, but okay.
Neither do I. But I do know that they did get it right. That was inspired by a comic book.
Now, here's another thing to ask you about this. You're a member of MUFON.
Yes, sir.
How many of these stories go along with alien creatures? And I was just talking about this on my last podcast. Who's to say we don't have these creatures already here? Aliens or entities, if you would call it, or beings, if you'll call them, that are not, and I forgot, but it was an X-Files show again that showed this spirit-like being on the moon and affecting astronauts. Who's to say that these beings are not already here and we're already living with them?
I think the veil's thin in certain places, and I think all kinds of things come through. I think that's why we have places like the Cold Mountain Triangle, like Skinwalker Ranch, like the Bridgewater Triangle and the Alaskan Triangle, and places like that.
Now, where's the Bridgewater Triangle? That one's I'm not familiar with either.
It's up in Massachusetts, and it goes through like Rehoboth and Hockomock Swamp, and the Pubwatchie creature has been seen up there as well.
Yeah.
It's known as a paranormal hotspot, just like any of these other places I've described. And
now, have you ever been to these places?
I haven't yet. That is actually on my bucket list as well. That's going to happen probably after we do Point Pleasant.
We got to plan something where all of us can do something. My problem is the money and right now to do stuff. But however, if I was given the opportunity, I'd hop on it like no tomorrow.
Yeah, that's kind of where we stand too. That's why I'm not going to be able to do it for a couple of years. But my two partners, Jake and Greg, they're definitely going to be in on this. I might have another person coming as well. And but it's going to be we're going to be there for at least 2 or 3 days, and we're going to look at all of it. And I'm planning, and I'm trying to interview Mr. Wamsley as well.
And there's a lot of things that, and let me get your opinion on this, because I think you'd be great for an opinion on this. How much have these people made it into a tourist attraction? And they want, almost like when I went to Salem, everything was a witch. Everything was witches. Everything was Halloween. Everything was, I wanted to know the history of how they brought the cannons in. At Salem, they brought the cannons into Boston for the war. There, the Monopoly was in the area of Salem. The first phone call was in the area of Salem. how much of Point Pleasant, how much of these areas where the Pudwudgies are, how much have been commercialized versus how much is, I mean, would we get there as a trip, and they have commercialized this Mothman so much? You know what I mean?
So yeah, I hear you. Once a year, they do the Mothman Festival, and they have a somewhat steady flow of tourists that come throughout the year. But I was gonna go last year. We were actually going to just have a family trip up there, and I was going to show I have a 15-year-old daughter that's kind of interested in the paranormal, and she wants to see what it's like to go on a real investigation. So I was going to include her. I wanted to include her because she's also interested in photography. She's a bright kid. Just Morgan, she's actually my stepdaughter, but I claim her as my daughter. She's a wonderful kid, and I thank God for her every day. Love her to pieces. But we were going to go last year, and something happened. My wife got really sick, and she wound up having a heart attack, and we had to postpone it for a while.
That's not good. I hope she's feeling better.
She had 2 mild heart attacks, and I tell you what, that mess takes forever to get over.
Yeah.
She still hasn't totally gotten over it.
I know several people that have had heart attacks, and afterwards they're not the same. Whatever happens, happens, and
yeah, that's pretty much how it is, and my heart aches for her every day for it.
Now, would Point Pleasant, and now that we're on this Mothman thing, and your Cold Mountain Triangle, what were these places like before the incident happened? Because I often wondered if stuff didn't happen and nobody said anything, or they weren't so. If that bridge hasn't fallen down, would we still have the Mothman like we do, or would it be minor stories and nobody would have even paid attention?
Well, that's a good question. I'll give, like, as an example. I've lived in several houses over the years in the town of Ball Ground, and in addition to the satanic activity that's been confirmed for decades, there's lots and lots of haunted locations, and I lived in 2 of them. And I believe that there's residual energy that resides in these places, and sometimes maybe if they are in fact disembodied human spirits, maybe they'll move on. I really don't know 100% if that's what's going on as far as ghosts go. That's a conversation for another day. But there's definitely paranormal phenomenon, and I actually had a very traumatic experience in one of those houses. It was very traumatic, and I just recently talked about it for the first time when I was being interviewed on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, it really depends on the situation. If it's something that's just if it's something attached to that house, it may go away. It may, sometimes if they build something else there, it'll come back or remanifest in one way or another. But that's as far as I can tell on that.
Now, if you talk about something very, very peculiar here, in the sense that you said satanic activity. It's very interesting to me, and I'm not saying I'm one of these loonies that think that satanic stuff is okay. Some of what they do is not okay. However, Anton LaVey, really quickly here, as many times when he was alive, stated that what people turned the religion into was not what he wanted. So, with that being said, could any of this stuff be because of demonic activity? Because of evilness, maybe?
So absolutely.
Or was it there before? Like I said, before this stuff happened. It's very interesting to me that you said it was satanically involved.
Well, sometimes you can have a hodgepodge of all kinds of things going on. The Cherokee tribe was big up here, and so that there's here and there you'll have Indian burial ground. So that always could come into effect. It's possible to come into the factor in some degree. But also, from my understanding, I'm still in the middle of researching this, me and one of my partners, but from my understanding, what little I know about it so far is it has been confirmed by authorities that a cult was operating in and around Pickens County, Georgia, and part of Forsyth, and found evidence to conclude that, including carcasses of dead cows and other animals.
Now that could have been just a farmer dumping his cows somewhere, couldn't it? I mean, farmers
Well,
do that.
there was also clear satanic symbols,
Okay.
the sigil of Baphomet. There's other
I've
evidence to
never heard of a
support.
satanic cult taking a cow and sacrificing it. I've heard of cats. We had an area here up where my daughter lives where they were actually killing cats, and I guess a girl was raped, and that's how they all found it down there.
Yeah,
Which
there's
is
different groups
it's
that have different
disgusting
styles
that
of
they do
Satanism.
that. But and please note again, Anton LaVey never wanted people hurting animals and doing disgusting things with them. So now, could the animal spirits be taking over?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Could the animal spirits be taking over?
You got me, man. All I know is there's a lot of. I woke up one of the incidents in one of the houses I lived in. I was living with a girlfriend at the time, and she had just recently had a baby, and all three of us woke up one morning with 3 scratches down our arms in the same place. Me, the baby, and her.
Sounds like the dog wants to answer some of our questions.
Oh yeah, he's going after a possum, I believe, right now. I apologize.
How many? What? That's pretty unique. He can find these animals. Where's he finding them?
We live in the middle of the woods in an old 2-bedroom house that was built in the 1920s.
Okay.
And real close to the lake, off the highway, kind of just a little ways off of the highway. And we live really close to the lake. As a matter of fact, in front, not almost directly in front of where I live on the highway, I had my first apparitional experience several months ago. And it's an apparition that my daughter, ironically, my daughter-in-law, or my oldest stepdaughter rather, saw a couple years ago. She saw the same apparition, just a quarter mile down the road.
What was it?
So I was coming home from work. There's a convenience store in front of my house on the highway. And then my driveway is to the left of the convenience store, and it's a gravel driveway that winds behind the convenience store and then kind of winds through the woods a ways. And then you get to a big clearing, and that's where my house is. So I was on approach. It was 0300 in the morning, and I was approaching the convenience store, and I started to put on my blinker, and I was easing on my brakes. And as I started to do that, I was almost right there in the dead center of the convenience store on the highway, and I got this unusual feeling all over my body. It was almost like an electric charge, but it was like all the hair on my body was standing up. And I looked to my right, and I saw what looked like the apparition of a woman wearing a white dress. And I went past it, and I turned into my driveway and by the mailboxes, and I was probably about 2.5, 3 seconds. I went past the apparition, and it was gone. No room and no time to run anywhere. I would have seen that person get away if it was a person. And come to find out, a few days later, my wife told my stepdaughter about this situation. She had the same experience. Go figure.
So there's a lady in white that lives on the property, or
Well, there's a lot of legends. There's a lady in blue also somewhere on the other side of the lake. Lake Lanier is huge. It was a man-made lake. The Corps of Engineers back many years ago created this lake, and there was 20 cemeteries, at least 15 that's confirmed, and there's 5 that I suspect were there. and then there was 3 little villages or towns, I guess you could say. And um, from my understanding, there has been a couple incidents where coffins have floated to the top of the water. There's still buildings.
So
There's
what
a
you're
church
telling me is
steeple.
they took cities and villages and dug them out and made into a big lake.
Correct.
They buried, basically, they drowned civilization.
Correct.
That in itself would spark anything right there.
And also to the fact that it's got water. It's a lake. Water conducts electricity, and that's what we find in a lot of PK situations that involve PK or poltergeists.
You have alligators?
Not this far north, but they have been seen around the lake a few times. And we think that someone just let them off in the wild.
Because I would think they would go down there and eat those bodies if you do. That would be a nice food source for animals.
Baby alligators, and yeah, it would. It certainly would.
Now, has that dog ever seen anything, like gone after anything, and he sees it, you don't?
So we had an incident in the last house that we lived in was very close to here. It was actually closer to the lake. You could walk about a half a click behind this house I lived in, and you'd be at a dock. It was even closer than we live now. And we had a lot of paranormal activity in that house. Everything from shadow entities that me and my wife both observed. My daughter was making a TikTok video one time when she was a lot younger, and she was jumping on her bed, and this black mass just swooped down at her, and she caught it on video. And we didn't know what that was. And but my wife, she has epilepsy. She has it. Thankfully, she seemed to have it under control. She takes Klonopin, and it keeps the seizures at bay. But at any rate, the first time she had a major seizure when I hadn't lived in that house with her for too long, and she went in the bathroom, and I heard this. My stepdaughter, and I heard this loud thump in the bathroom, and she went from the commode head first into the bathtub. She was stiff as a board. So, remembering my medical training I had in the military, I got her airway unobstructed. Her lips were blue from cyanotic, and I got her airway unobstructed, thank God. And I was on the phone with 911 at the same time while I was working on her. And I got her on her feet barely, and I got her to the living room and sat her on the couch so the firefighters and EMTs could come look at her. Well, as they were approaching, right as they were approaching, they were pulling up in front of our house. My wife, she wears glasses. Her glasses fell off onto the floor, and then they stopped. They kind of between my feet and her feet. Nobody was touching it, and Sandy would kind of started to lean back, and her feet were kind of raised up a little bit off the ground. So I know her feet didn't touch it. And right as these firefighters were walking over the threshold into my home, those glasses took off halfway across the house by themselves. Now, what's significant about that is there's a theory in parapsychology that there's a link between poltergeist activity and telekinesis and epileptic seizures. And it happened in front of me and 2 firefighters.
Well, either that or the spirit just came out of her. I mean, if
it's
I've never known anybody to have a seizure or go stiff as a board. That could have been.
Sometimes they do.
That could have been some kind of a spirit exiting and entering her body. However,
that is possible.
However, telekinesis, females, and I've seen it with my own daughter. She got mad one time, and it seems to happen when females have a eruption of mood, which anger can cause. And she just stomped on the floor, and all of her butch flew in the air and went all over the place. Now her mom comes in, why are you throwing your books? I said she didn't throw them. And she got a little scared. I knew exactly what it was. So what you're saying might have been true. For our listening audience who's saying, what are we talking about? Telekinesis is where something will float by itself, I guess. An energy source provided by a living source. Now, I hope I'm explaining it right, the best I can here.
That's pretty good, actually. That's actually pretty good.
The glasses, if you're, to me, this sounds like an energy source went through glass. Remember, the glasses are a mirror. My friend did optics, and he explained to me what glasses and mirrors were because I had a case with investigation. I said, Joe explained this to me. We've had Joe on this program. You can go up and listen to it on our website. I said, explain to me what glass is and everything. And he did. And the glasses are a glass source. The telekinesis on the rug would have caused electricity. So you might have had a electronic burst of energy and not know it.
It's very possible.
Have you ever repeated? I mean, don't repeat all the medical stuff and seizure and the horrible thing happened to her. But put the glasses on the floor and see if rubbing on the floor could create electricity or...
No, not yet. But I'll tell you what we have done. My wife is also, she's multidisciplinary as far as psychic phenomenon goes. Mm-hmm. I have a deck of Zener cards.
And people with seizures are also psychic and other things. They can pick up on things real quick.
Correct. She's very empathic and clairvoyant. And I bought a deck of Zener cards earlier this year, and the deck has 25 cards in it.
What is it again?
Zener cards were designed by the parapsychologist Dr. Ryan, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
that's the ones with the circles and stars and funny shapes
Correct.
on them, or anything. Now it can be anything. Teddy bears are on them and everything. And I guess
Correct.
the object is to hold in Ghostbusters when the guy
Correct.
was on purposely electrocuting the guy, being a jerk and trying to hit on the woman there.
Yeah, exactly.
However, the Ghostbusters had a theory that punishment can make you mind want to do things better. I think that's what he was trying to prove. Maybe he was being
negative
a jerk.
Reinforcement on extrasensory perception.
Yeah, maybe he was being a jerk trying to hit on the woman. I don't know, but
probably, who knows? It's Dr. Bankman.
Yeah, the cards.
So the cards, yeah.
Yeah.
So so in the deck there's 25 cards, and I gave her. We did 10 rounds of testing, and out of those 10 rounds, she used various different techniques. Sometimes she would close her eyes and she would hold the card, and her eyes stayed very closed, and she would pull the card, and then to where the shape was facing me. Sometimes I would pull the card and hold it very close to my face, and I would look at it, and then she would. Out of all 10 of those tests, she consistently scored between 14 and 24 correct. And most of the ones she missed were precognitive. They were that I was going to end up drawing.
I would love to see this experiment performed. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's kind of alarming that somebody would be that correct. However, what's the average? What's the average?
According to what I've learned about about this type of this is basic remote viewing is basically what it is. It's
I'm just being skeptical only because, you know what I mean? My skeptic mind says, okay, somebody could have read it, they could have seen it in a mirror, they could have shuffled the cards, they looked like they could have, But anyways, what's the average?
Well, the idea, from what we learned at UCLA's parapsychology lab in the 60s and 70s, and what we learned through Project Stargate in the Army and CIA, is that anybody can be trained to remote view and use clairvoyant abilities. Anybody can. However, some people are just naturally adept to it. The average Joe would probably would guess, or who have been trained on how to remote view, the actual people who aren't adept to it, rather I should say, they'll get maybe a few right. Some of them will get none of them right. Some of them will get 8, 9, 10 of them right, maybe even 11. My wife consistently scored between 14 and 24 each time, and
So
like
that's
I
about a
said,
70% when the average would do 30.
correct.
That's pretty good. I would
Yeah,
like to know where to get a set of these cards. However,
Amazon.
however, I know they've changed over the years. I would love to get the original. What was it? 5 patterns, and it was
Correct. And
duplicated
they still
twice.
sell them, and it comes with a little book and everything. It's pretty cool, even for just a casual collector. It's pretty cool, even
Yeah,
if you're
I've
not
seen
serious
one
about
now that
this
has
research.
teddy bears on it. It has houses, simple drawings, bad drawings, the lightning lines, the little zigzag lines. Uh, it's kind of like tarot cards, if you would, guessing what the symbols were. Now, with this study that they did on remote viewing, if I'm not mistaken, it was proven that anybody could find anything because they would know the area. And all you would have to do is describe it being a wooded area, and almost 80% of Americans know what a wooded area looked like. Has that test ever been done with something that's totally, totally bizarre? Like they just got a group of people that didn't even know why they were there, and then took somebody somewhere, like the mall, and said, "I want you to go to a store and sit in it," and not even know where the person's sitting, and then do it? Or was it
That's
all,
correct.
or was it all scheduled? What I call scheduled, where they knew where the person was sitting, they knew what the people were doing. The people knew they were going to remote view.
So it's done. So it's done under very controlled conditions. It's sometimes even sensory deprivation is most of the time in controlled scientific labs and whatnot. They actually do sensory deprivation. And what it does, the theory behind it is that it allows you to, when you cut off your most of your natural senses that we're used to using, you can focus more. Your brain can process the information coming to it through
Yes,
clairvoyance.
yes, that's why your dog would know more than we do because he doesn't have all these stimulants. Um, I call it the
Very true.
animal brain. If you got rid of your computers and you got rid of all your stuff and went outside and sat in, a went up on a hiking trail, your body would begin to hear noises and feel stuff that would make you so eerie you would walk back to your car and none of it would be dangerous. I've done it. Um, Now, can remote viewing like this, like somebody like your wife or somebody that wants to do it, um, is there a database for these people? Like they posted their findings, or was it all top secret?
Well, it was the program was declassified at one point. There was actually a segment of Unsolved Mysteries about it. And that's where I first learned about it back in the early '90s. And I had one of the guys who participated in it, who was an Army Ranger, and he was a participant in it. And we early people who participated in the program were people like Ingo Swan, Pat Price. Pat Price was very interesting. He was actually a police detective. So I think in San Diego or L.A. I can't remember. It was somewhere in California. I think he was a constable or a detective, and he had the most remarkable hunches that you could imagine and abilities to solve cases. It was just uncanny. So when he retired out of the police force, he started exploring more of his clairvoyant abilities, and he helped solve. He could solve crimes, and he worked with Project Stargate.
Now, how much did they, or was it just an experimental project? Because there's been a lot of experimental projects between the British military, our military, Russia. Madame Blavatsky was involved in some things up in Russia. I mean, I hate to bring up Russia now with what's going on, but we're talking about scientific stuff here. We're not talking about wars. Um, they had the Nazis, of course. We discussed that earlier. There was a lot of scientific data to get where the enemy is without conventional means. We didn't have drones, we didn't have TVs, we didn't have, or what we did have was very minimal of finding the enemy. Do you think that this stuff would work now better, or do you think it would be worse?
So, from my understanding, I had Dr. Barry Taft on my show last year, and we talked a little bit about his day. He was at the UCLA parapsychology lab, and he's actually the parapsychologist that investigated the famous entity case. They made a movie about it with Barbara Hershey in it, about a very violent poltergeist that was accosting a woman. And he was one of the scientists that actually investigated that real case when he was working at the UCLA parapsychology lab ran by Dr. Thelma Moss. But they had various degrees of success. They had situations where they were training people. Some people who were both adept and not adept. They had to pass a certain psychological profile to fit their need, and that would be able to comply with their conditions. And they had various degrees of success. They had some people that got just barely, they got it right, but not much. And then you had people that were literally, some of it right, they lost their minds.
Now, when you say lost their minds, you mean these people went crazy, or were they just shocked and amused?
Some of them ended up in mental institutions.
From seeing what they did, or from actually having stuff done to them? I mean, if you take away sensory perception and depth and deeds of scientists wanting to prove stuff, you could make somebody go nuts just by your experimental procedures.
So the answer is I don't know for sure, but I think it may be a combination of both. But you have to understand this. You know, I've studied a lot about consciousness over the years, and people who, everything from near-death experiences to out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming, so on and so forth. And there's a place that Father Malachi Martin referred to as the plateau. And what I think that is I think it's like the fourth dimension. I think it's that there's, when they remote view or have out of body experiences, they're either their consciousness is being able to see into the fourth dimension any in certain ways, and then sometimes I think that when people have out of body experiences or near death experiences, they pass through that plateau. And I actually had read a testimony about a woman who had a remarkable near-death experience. And as she left her body, her consciousness left her body, she passed through our universe like faster than the speed of light. Like if she was in the universe for like a couple seconds, then she was gone. She was in another dimension. As she looked at that dimension, it collapsed on itself. And then she kept moving up and up and up through these other dimensions. And as she would go into another dimension, she would see the other dimension collapse on itself. So it's very interesting. This is a very interesting science where all this stuff has some connection.
So the dimension actually was destroyed, or did it just collapse for her?
No, it was just collapsed for her.
Because I've in meditative states found myself going somewhere.
Well, odds are you're in the plateau.
I believe that's how you have an out-of-body experience, is your body goes somewhere. Now,
yeah, I've never had one that I know of. I'm not sure if I've had an out-of-body experience, but I've had one of the most remarkable things I've had happen to me is clairvoyant dreams.
And what is? I mean, I know what they are, but for our listeners, really quick, what is?
That's the actual term. I'm sure that's what I call them, because that's kind of what it is.
They're the dreams where you dream something and it comes true.
Correct.
Yeah, psychic dreams. Yeah.
Psychic dreams.
Yeah. I have a friend who does that. My fiance, in fact, she. I might as well say fiance on my show. Why not?
Congratulations.
She can. She can dream and see things that are going to happen, and you know, it kind of worries me that that can happen. However, maybe for, if you could remember your dreams, if you could write them down, if you could, I suffer from sleep paralysis, and I have more than once woken up in another state of being, if you will, where I was not here on Earth. I knew that. Or whatever realm I was in was not the one that I went to sleep in. That's for sure. Until my body became aware of itself. Maybe.
Yeah, I've had sleep paralysis several times. It's an absolutely horrible experience for anybody to go through.
Mine is where my eyes open up and my brain and your brain and eyes know where you're at, but no muscles can move in your body. I've seen people standing around me. I've seen shadow figures. I've seen shadowy things in places. I've literally woken up and forced my head to move, and I was laying in a field. I couldn't feel their grasses, but I knew they were there. And then when your body starts to come to, you're no longer there, which is really freaky.
Yeah, it's a terrifying experience.
My mom used to tell me that she would come in and have to put me back on the bed, and she would say I was floating. Now,
so I had an experience just like that one time.
Yeah.
And I actually have a scoop mark up here on my wrist the next morning.
Now, what? This is very interesting. We talked about this. What is this scoop mark? I tried looking it up and I could not find anything. What is it, or how did you get it? I mean, I know, but our listeners don't.
To you?
No, you couldn't. It didn't go through. But describe this, and you have a mark like something was injected in you.
Okay, so scoop marks, what they are, is what we think they are, at least. During hypnotic regression, one thing that's very common is these entities, whatever they are, use some sort of device that scoops a little bit of flesh off of your body. They appear everywhere from your arm, your wrist, your thighs, your stomach. I've seen it a lot on thighs and wrists. And mine happened after waking up early in the morning or in the middle of the night. And I fed this, and I was floating several feet above my bed. And the next thing, I was paralyzed. I felt like I was suffocating. But I knew that I wasn't touching my bed. I knew I was above my bed because I couldn't feel my pillow underneath my head. I could feel my body. I just couldn't move. And the last thing I knew is I slammed into my bed, and then I just blacked out. And I remember waking up the next morning, and I was brushing my teeth, and I saw this mark on my wrist that was not there before, and I never had an injury or a surgery or anything there. And it's still there today.
Now, what exactly does it look like?
It looks like a spoon, a sharp spoon or something. Just scooped some of my skin off. That's the only way I know how to describe it. And it looks like it's got like two little marks inside of it as well.
Now, when you press on it, does it change color like the rest of your skin? Because if you press on your skin enough, your skin will either turn red or red.
I've never actually tried that.
Try it. Right now, try it.
Sure. Let me go
I have a
outside
reason for asking you this.
Okay. Hang on just a minute.
Just press on it like you would press on your arm, like you're just pressing on your arm, touching it, hanging on to it, like somebody grabbed your
arm. Push on it hard?
Well, just, you just press on it. And you ever press on your arm with your fingers and it turns red?
White.
White? Okay, well, that's a natural skin color. That means nothing was done to your skin. Nothing was done to the components of your cells, because if you pressed on it and nothing happened. Now, when you pressed on it, did you feel it, or is it completely numb?
So I felt something. I felt something underneath it, like bone or something.
No, I meant, did you feel it? Like you confidently know you touched yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, randomly, Just really quick touch the spot without you. Just pick a time when we're talking here and do it. Because what happens is if your skin is manipulated, if you've had injections, if you've had something take your skin apart or put it back together, what's going to happen is there's going to be a numbness. There's going to be some kind of differentiational thing. Now, what I think you're describing is the tubes that they put in. Now, how I know this, I don't know. I know a lot about abductions, and I don't know how I know it, and I don't know why I know it, and it worries me. And people can describe an abduction with aliens, and I'll be like, yes, this happened, and this is why. I think they're putting a tube on you and trying to take something out. Maybe bone marrow. Now, is the bone...
Could be.
Have you ever had it x-rated? Like an x-ray on it?
I haven't, but I've had some people who I consider to be the world's authority on this subject. Daryl Sims and Kathleen Martin. I had them take a look at it. I've sent them I have a very good high resolution photograph of it, and I sent them to look at it. They seem both think it's consistent with what they've experienced, what they've seen very consistently in their years of researching.
Yeah. Now, if it's when you say you slammed back on your bed, that's very interesting. Did you wake up according when you slammed? Like you touch your bed and you wake up and you're like, whoa, I don't remember sleeping, because I'll wake up a lot of times and not remember I slept, and I probably slept through the whole night.
I don't remember those particular details, but all I remember is when I hit the bed, I basically it was like I was unconscious, like I was asleep, deeply asleep, or something.
So somebody had lifted you off your bed and then put you in a sleeping state so you'd wake up normally.
Yes, I believe so.
Now, I had a first-hand account of a UFO abducting somebody when I was a child, and I met a female men in black. They were very nice, but the man was a little odd. One, he was headed. Two, his eyes would not focus on you. They were like kind of always, you knew they were looking at something else. And you were in the military, and you know that training can do that, but I don't think this was training.
Not that I'm aware of.
And I got the feeling that they both were almost like she knew what he was talking about and what she was talking about. Kind of like they knew what each other's conversation was. And there's really no way to do that if you're in two separate rooms. So
there's a lot of paranormal phenomena associated with the Men in Black.
Yeah, it was really weird.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of the old European vampire legends. They will not come in your house, based on testimonies. They will not come in your house unless you invite them.
Oh, they just walked in. They knocked on the door, opened the door, and walked in.
Wow, that's very interesting.
I know. That's why I said. And one was female, one was male. I've never heard of a female Men in Black.
Nick Redfern, this author, he wrote a book about the Men in Black, the women, actually. And there is a phenomenon that called the women in black, and sometimes they are seen with the men in black, and sometimes they're by themselves, and they fit that bizarre profile of the men in black to the T.
She was very, what would I say, very straight-laced kind of person. Nothing was humorous. She talked to me and I was a child, and she talked to me in a nice, calm voice. However, I got the impression that she was going to try to grab me at any time. I didn't like the feeling I got from her, although she was very nice to me. And the only way I can explain this is if you've ever been pulled over by a police officer, and he gets out of his car, and he holds his, onto his revolver, and he walks up to the car, and you get this feeling like you have no control. You have to do what this man says or else. That's kind of the feeling I got. My mom told me that she got the feeling that these two people were not who they said they were, that they lied about everything the guy said. And she thinks that they were not government, which I can attend to that because the government hires all the time. They hire third parties, second parties. They even hire mercenaries for war that we don't know about.
Yeah, they hire private security all the time. Most people who I have battle buddies who join companies like Blackwater and others like that,
Yeah.
and you have to go. You have to have a security clearance and everything.
Yeah. Well, and later I have other relatives that acknowledged that they do contracting out, and these other relatives knew who they were or what they were doing, and they even talked to somebody, and we were told that they would not bother us again. He was given an apology for bothering us, which I don't understand that at all. I don't understand any of that. I really don't.
They act bizarre, that's for sure.
Now, what we saw and what I remember seeing was just the most bizarre thing I ever saw in my life. We could have a whole nother show on it. But I'll tell you one thing. We don't know where these people went because when they left the house, we looked for them. My mom wanted to call the police. And another neighbor came over wondering, who the people were at the house. But we don't know where they went. And the only direction I could say is up, because they didn't go to the left or the right. And most human beings do not go upwards when they leave, or downwards, which would have been in the ground. So it still doesn't make sense to me how they disappear so fast.
That's very bizarre. I just thought it was worth mentioning to you, Brother Wade. If any of your listeners want to have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them.
Yes, my number is up there for them, 607-238-3816. The lines have been open. Now, a lot of times we don't get a lot of calls. I've been bouncing back and forth to our YouNow chat room, and a few people are laughing. That's about all we've gotten. There's a few LOLs, which, I guess. I mean, if you want to laugh at this stuff, you can. But I know it's real, and he knows it's real. Now,
absolutely.
Another thing on the Men in Black is I don't want to have to scare our audience and say this is normal. And it's pretty bizarre. As I talk about the Men in Black, my computer starts to act up, which is really weird. For the people that are watching in our YouNow chat room, thank you all for coming. We have Johnny Vegas joins us. He normally comes in. We have Fly Skin, and we have our regular Facebook. If anybody wants to call in, our phone lines are open. But like I just said, I don't want to scare our audience in thinking that these people can just walk in your house, because that's not really true. Nobody can do that. However, I think it's very bizarre that they knocked on the door, opened up, and knew both our names.
It is really bizarre, and the interesting, to add to what you just said, most encounters with the Men in Black that occur at someone's residence, most of them, they will not come in your house unless you invite them.
No, these people, I remember it like it's yesterday. I was sitting on the couch trying to figure out my wrestling toys, because I collected wrestling toys. And I had just played with them outside with a friend. He showed me his, and I thought one of them was broken. It wasn't. So I was playing with it. Next thing you know, somebody opens the door, which only two people in our lives at that point could do that. My mom's friend and my grandma. So I'm thinking, okay, I look up, and there's a lady coming in the door, dressed in like a black, suit outfit, with a man standing behind her with a hat on, bald man. I get up. My mom looks at him and says, excuse me. And the female sits down on the couch next to me and says, well, I would like to ask you some questions if you don't mind. And the guy walks out in the kitchen with my mom and stands there. It's really bizarre on why we even fell for it. I mean, why did not my mom pick up a frying pan since she was trying to cook something, I guess, and hit the man in the head with it? I
Well,
don't know.
sometimes
I
there is one thing that's reported from time to time, and I'm not saying this necessarily is what happened, but sometimes a lot of experiencers who have these men in black encounters report having at least a slight feeling of being in some sort of different state of consciousness.
no, I didn't get that feeling. I got the feeling that this lady was nice, and for some reason, kind of hypnotic almost. That what she was asking me was okay. I don't know why. Obviously, she asked me about what we saw and who the kid was, and it was really weird. Now, I think it was a very short span of time. It wasn't very long. They got up and walked out, and I went to the door. Now, why I went to the door, I don't know. Maybe to push them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And then my
absolutely.
mom came to the door, and they weren't out the door. They were not there. And there's only two places they could have gone: in the ground and just sucked themselves in the ground, or floated up in the air.
Yeah, that happens all the time. They just vanish into thin air sometimes. Dan Aykroyd had it testified about an account he had with the Men in Black. He was actually filming a show for the Sci-Fi Channel, and he had just interviewed Dr. Stephen Greer, and he was taking a break outside smoking a cigarette. And as he's smoking a cigarette, he looked across the street, and his phone rings, and he sees across the street what looked like an old Cadillac that just came off the conveyor belt, and several men in black. One of them was standing outside the car giving him an ugly look. And he said that Britney Spears was calling him and asking him if he wanted to be on Saturday Night Live with him, blah, blah, blah. And he looks away, and just for like a second, and he looks back, and they're gone. They didn't have time to drive down the street of Manhattan to the next block. I mean, they just 1 second.
And the guy's appearance, I don't think it's out of the ordinary. I mean, the look he gave me, I could get a look like that at church. I could get a look at Walmart. Any elderly, bald-headed man could have been wearing a black suit. I don't think her suit was black. I think her suit was blue, or that navy color. But something of this straight-laced, really affectionate, all her moves, all his moves. I mean, people sit down. I mean, it was all methodical, like almost robotic in nature.
Very similar to how the Greys move. The little gray entities. That's how they move. It's very, very fluid and graceful and
Yeah.
robotic-like.
I have a story about them as well, but we can do that for a whole nother program. Like I said, we could have a whole nother program on aliens.
We should. We can whoop something up. I just our listeners, if you don't mind, you can find Project Stargate Fringe Research on Facebook. You can also find it on YouTube very simply, and then we're also on Spotify and Amazon Podcast as well. So we're on several formats. You can check out our show, and if you don't mind, please hit the if you enjoy what you see or listen to, just hit the like and subscribe button. And I've really enjoyed this conversation.
You can plug your website if you want to, if you have one or anything you have. I don't mind.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We're actually working on a traditional website right now. We're still operating primarily our Facebook page, but we're going to have before 2 weeks, and we're going to put our really cool articles and updates and upcoming Stargate Fringe research.
For the story, I started acting up.
Happens all the time.
Pretty odd.
I have technical issues all the time when I'm talking to specific people. You should have heard my interview of Daryl Sims. I mean, we had so many problems, it wasn't even funny.
Well, have you ever heard of that man that admits that he worked for Area 51 or something on Art Bell's show?
Yeah, that was a hoax. You talking about the guy who said he was their interdimensional entities was actually coming after him? He was an actor, and because he came on Fade to Black several years ago, and he said that he started this act very similar to it. And it was the same guy, you could tell.
Well,
And then he's like,
they think that the original conversation was true, and that they're saying it's an act to cover it up because Art Bell, I guess, have had two people come on to admit something.
"Wow, who
I
knows? It
don't
could
I
be."
don't believe he was an actor. I don't believe the first one was an actor. I believe that they put somebody in that acting spot on purpose to cover it up because obviously they don't want this stuff to be known.
Could be. Who knows?
However, he didn't know anything about Area 50 like Bob Lazar. I mean, I'd love to have Bob Lazar on this program. I have two questions for him that I don't understand. And the whole
Well, good
story.
luck with that, and let me know if you do, because I'd love to hear that, because he's very, very hard to get on to come on anything. I was surprised to see him come on Joe Rogan.
Well, the problem is I think he doesn't want to be in the media. He did his job. He worked. I think it makes him real. He did his job. He worked. He had a problem. Now, why are you bugging the man about it? And how many other people?
I get it from him.
How many other people have worked there? And, you know, that's one of the questions I'd like to ask. What he did after or before to have gotten the job, and see if the proof is there about that too. But that's one of the things I don't understand is no one's come forward to working with him, or no one was on the payroll, so to speak, with him. But if they can't talk about it, they're not going to.
Precisely.
Now, personally, if you were there and you knew somebody else came forward and nothing happened to him, because nothing really bad has happened to him, okay?
Nothing too bad.
Well, I meant nothing. He still has money. He still has a place to live. He's still talking to people. He's still in good health. I mean, if the government really wanted to do something, or an agency, because I don't think Area 51 is run by the government, if an agency wants to get you, they're going to do it. Plain and simple, they're going to do it. Which I don't. I mean, his time there was up, and he worked there. That's. I don't. I don't think the man should be bothered, but I'd like to have him because I'd just like to talk about what the technology was and the field that he was in. The engineering field fascinated me. It fascinated me that they have these things. It's fascinated me that the government has always had what they call contractors to do their work. And I've heard of other stories. I'm not going to divulge any names or anything. But I've heard of other stories of people that have worked as contractors. And the stories are incredible. They're
Absolutely.
And you said you know a few who have become mercenaries. I guess that you just named the company. There's a Hawk something is a company. There's a few of them, and what people don't realize is the government uses these to help them with our war, because not everybody, our means are not always what they are in the time of war. And of course, we don't have a bunch of James Bonds running around, or if we do, we'll never know about it.
We definitely have spooks. We have a ton of spooks.
Spooks, as in
James Bond, deep state, James Bond like cats.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is these people are not going to come forward and say who they are.
Oh,
we'll never get one on the show.
Their family will never know who they are.
I would love to have Miss X, as we call her, come on the show again, but the show was taken down from YouTube. It was asked to be taken down. I don't know how. They said it was, violated their stuff and all this. I think because of the topic we had. She knows about Men in Black, and her friend came on. It was in the Men in Black. And what she told me was, it's just mind-blowing. Now, you worked in the military. I'm not sure what you did. But I know some of what she said was the truth, because I know other people that have done the job for the military. However, it's just mind blowing that people are out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just mind blowing that we have men in black that can just walk into our house. And if you did call the police, what would happen? Nothing. I've heard many times people have called the police on men in black or something, and nothing's happened.
Yeah.
And if these are interdimensional beings and aliens and other things, what are they doing dressed in suits, driving Cadillacs, coming over to our house to ask us questions with?
And that's $1 billion question.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It doesn't make any sense. And when it doesn't make any sense, I start getting really puzzled about it and say, there's more to it. It's almost too good to, that saying, it's almost too good to be true. Well,
It's too
something's
incredible
up.
to be true.
But I would love it if our audience or your audience has stories. I'd love to put together a show completely about aliens and alien abductions. But the last time I tried it, the person got really afraid and did not want to come on. So it was a very quick show, but we did talk about aliens and the universe and stuff. But things are winding down now here, and I'd love to have you back on talking about these other topics, and love to come on your show as well.
Sure, absolutely.
And if you can get those other people in touch with me, it would be greatly appreciated.
Sure, we'll see what we can work out sometime. Maybe we can do like a round table or something.
Yeah, it would be great just to ask some questions about Bigfoot from another researcher or somebody that researches a little higher than I do.
Sure, I have a couple people in mind for you already. Actually, I'll be in touch with you on that one.
And the one big question that I'd like to know is, why has part of me says we need to catch it. The other part says, why are you thinking that way? Why do we need to disturb whatever this is? But the other part says we need to catch it. But what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? It takes 10 of those tubes to put down a polar bear. And if the polar bear wakes up, we know what he's going to do. What do we do on a creature we don't know what's going to do? How much does it take to knock him out? And how fast can he wake up from it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, I don't know. I don't know if I'm just a caring, wonderful person and don't think we need to go out there and destroy something that's nice. Or, maybe there's something more to it and we have caught him. That's a whole nother topic. But the government already knows. They have satellites. They have pictures. They already know it exists. I'm without a shadow of a doubt, I know that.
I believe so too. I'm pretty sure they do.
So we're winding down. My website is www.iambrotherwade.com. Our phone number is 607-238-3816. One more time, go ahead and plug your stuff so people know where to find you.
Yeah, so we're on Facebook right now. You can find us on Facebook. You can just simply type in the search box Project Stargate Research at Fringe, and we're also and you can our YouTube channel. You can watch the video versions on your smart TV or any device.
All right. Well, it's been nice talking. It's been nice having the conversation tonight. I enjoyed you coming up, even though it was last minute. We did have a wonderful time here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very honored to be with you and enjoyed sharing my research and information with your audience. And I appreciate the opportunity.
And as always, folks, I will see you next time.